sense, but some of it you may not have ever heard of before, or understand what was causing it, or where to even look. So we're going to go over that tonight, and hopefully if you guys have any questions, you can chime in tonight and we can get those answered. But valve stem wear, the reason it's so important is if you don't make sure that the engine doesn't have a problem there, you can suck a valve in the engine and it's going to destroy your engine. And that's a bad day at the racetrack. That thing not working?
No, it's, I thought you would turn it on.
Oh.
They can hear you still.
Okay.
They can hear you better now.
So you can hear me better now.
Yeah.
All
They
right.
can hear you more better.
More better? All right. Anyway, so the most common area that you see valve stem wear, and whenever you take an engine apart, is the tip. It starts to erode on the tip here. And there's several things that can cause that.
Switch to that camera so you can show them.
Yeah, well, this one doesn't have any wear on it, but I can point to it a little better. So anyhow, your valve stem area where the rocker rides on the tip there, you'll get wear there, and there's several reasons for that. Might be lack of oil. If you have a push rod that got plugged up and it's not getting oil to the rocker arm, well, it's obviously not going to get oil to the rocker tip because that's where it's getting its oil from. It could be from excessive spring pressure. It could also be, I wish I had some pictures to show you guys. I don't have anything to show you of beat up valve stem, and I don't have any here, but
Would this be something?
that actually, I can't see that. Let me take a look here. Oh
That
yeah,
looks like-
that's ugly. That's ugly. So that got beat up. That's something we can look at and we can talk about.
Okay.
He's gonna try to pull a picture up here. So, but anyway, so you get the what we ultimately want to see on the tip of our valve stem is you want to see a nice even pattern across there where the tip rolls across it or the flat surface of the rocker rolls on it, and it should be nice and shiny and smooth. And if it isn't, then you need to start looking and see why that is. So I think he's got a picture here, but excessive valve lash will beat up the valve stem. Lack of oil will destroy a valve stem, make it overheat and it start to flake away. The cylinder pressure, if you're running a turbocharged engine or a blown engine on the exhaust side, you're trying to push that exhaust valve open against the cylinder pressure. And I don't know where I'm at on the camera here, but anyway, so whenever you have that kind of pressure exerting on that small surface area, it's going to create problems and make the tip fail. So that's one area to look. Another area is the valve guide or the keeper area. And now this is I want to show you the two different styles. This is a square groove, okay, and this one here is a bead lock. And what a bead lock is, it actually has a radius groove. It doesn't have a square groove like this one does. I don't know if you can see those two side by side, if you can see what I'm talking about there on that. But this is a square groove, this is a radius groove. Now, radius grooves you want to run with high spring pressure. If you know anything about stress areas, a square groove creates, it has a sharp edge, so it's going to create a fracture or a possible fracture area. So a radius groove does not have that. It's nice and smooth in there, it's got a round radius to it, you don't have a stress riser. And so like for normal engine use, like if you have like a hydraulic cam, flat tappet cam, even hydraulic roller cams, a square groove lifter or groove is fine. And as a matter of fact, most of your auto manufacturers, this is exactly what you get. And they go hundreds of thousands of miles and there's no problem with them. But whenever you get into a high RPM race engine, which has more spring pressure, then you want to go with a radius groove on the valve stem, and these are custom made valves. You got to get them custom made. Some companies are now stocking, or what they do, they call shelf stock valves with a radius groove on them. Actually, some of your factory engines did it too. Mopar did it, I think. They had actually had 3 grooves in there, and they were radius. And I think Ford might have done it as well, but GM never done it. They may do it now on some of the newer stuff. I don't know for sure. But anyways, what'll happen in this area here, if you don't have enough valve spring pressure, you might see where this thing is getting some fretting. And fretting, all that is it's just a sign of 2 pieces of metal rubbing together. That's what fretting is. And if you see that, it could be because you don't have enough spring pressure. And whenever the valve is floating, we'll say, it could relieve the ability to clamp against the valve stem with the keepers. And when that happens, then they move around, they start fretting on there. And a lot of times it doesn't really hurt anything. You can go, hundreds of thousands of miles that way, but for a race engine, it's critical, because then what'll happen is after a while it's going to make that tip pop off the valve stem, and when that happens, then you psych a valve. But so we got those 2 areas to look at. The other area is the valve stem itself, and there's all kinds of reasons for the valve stem to wear too. It's not just a matter of abuse. It's from lack of oil. If your valve stem to guide clearance is too tight, then you're not going to get enough lubrication between the valve stem and the guide, and that's going to create a problem. So you want to make sure you have a minimum on the intake valve of 1.5 to 2 thousandths clearance, and on the exhaust you want around 2 to 2.5 thousandths clearance, so you get enough oil film in there. And use the valve stem seal to control your oil. Use a positive seal. As you can see, these valves don't have a double groove on them. The factory valves do, and it's a little rubber band type seal that goes underneath this and seals right up against the bottom of this retainer right here whenever it's installed on the valve. And that works okay. It just keeps the oil from running down here and down the stem. But what's going on down here, you're still going to get oil inside the engine, because oil's splashing around inside the head too. So we use what's called a positive seal, which actually goes down and presses onto the guide, and then positively seals around the valve stem. And they're designed to allow enough oil in to keep the valve lubricated. But things that can cause valve stem wear, besides lack of lubrication, believe it or not, is a dirty air filter. If you have a dirty air filter on the intake valve, you can see a lot of abrasion on the valve stem. If somebody, like a circle track car, runs in dirt, or a drag car where somebody doesn't run an air filter and makes a lot of passes, you're going to see valve stem wear from that. So that's the other area. Another thing that can cause valve stem wear, and actually guide wear too, so you want to look at your guides as well whenever you tow the engine down, is if your seat is not concentric with the valve seat in the head. And what I mean by that is you're going to have them, they're not going to be centered, they're going to be offset a little bit. And what that does is it'll push against the side of the valve, and over time it keeps pushing the valve cockguide in the guide, and it's going to wear the guide out, and it's going to cause a lot of valve stem wear. The other bad part about that is too, it causes head flex on your valve. And whenever your valve's coming up and it's not hitting that seat nice and square all the way around, it's cocking it. So this valve every time is bending. And you know what happens when you take a piece of metal and you keep bending it, after a while it's going to break. So it's very important, whoever does a valve job, they make sure they get the seats concentric. If not, you're gonna have a major problem. And we see that a lot. And something will happen too, is with aluminum heads, you can have the valve job concentric whenever you get done with it, but after the engine's run and went through some heat cycles, the valve seats will move around a little bit. So I always tell the guys, you know what, with a virgin head, we want to run the engine maybe for, if it's a street car, you're not going to worry about it too much. But for a race engine, I might tell the guys, you know what, bring this thing back after you got the heads back after you have a 50 or 100 passes on it, and let us do the valve job over again, because they move that much. Some of them will move 15 thousandths, I've seen, which is crazy, and that's normal. I mean, that just happens with aluminum heads. So
do you recommend that with your Tiger, or not Tiger?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rammer 5 head.
Yep, any aluminum head. Our Rammer 5 heads, all of them, and it, you know, even the factory heads, like the LS heads we get in here. We just did a set of factory LS heads, and they were off probably about 12 thousandths, and that's a factory head. And fortunately for it didn't hurt the valve guide any, but it did ruin the valves. So, but yeah, so we got to look at that. The other thing you're going to look at as well is your keepers. When they go on these valve stems, all right, so what you want to do is whenever you're assembling this, you want to make sure there is a gap.
Real close to that camera right there, you can show.
You want to make sure there's a gap on one side of that, okay? If those things are touching on both sides, see this one here, it's touching on this side, but on this side it's got a gap. Well, if they touch on both sides, guess what's going to happen? There's no room for that to expand with heat, and there's no room for it to clamp against the valve stem. So that can cause fretting too, and or it can cause a stress situation where it'll actually shear the top of the valve off. It'll pull the tip right off the valve. So you got to make sure there's enough room in between the keepers too. And you have to check with every manufacturer's different. And you would think that there's an industry standard and everybody would manufacture their parts the same, but I'm telling you right now, we just dealt with it. I just shared a video of an intake manifold we got, and it wouldn't even seal up with the gasket. We didn't even touch it yet, and it wouldn't seal up with the gasket. And so we had to modify that. And then we're putting axles in brand new axles in a BOP 10 bolt, and for whatever reason, they were a 1/4 inch too long. And so we had to cut those down, bevel the edge, and clean up the splines on it and make everything fit. But it just, you got to check everything. Don't assume. So anyway, that's pretty much the basic areas that you're going to look at whenever you're checking valve stem wear, and it's critical because if you don't catch that, or if you don't put it together properly because of the seats not being concentric, or the keepers touching, or even you could have the wrong keeper. These are 10-degree keepers, okay? They have a 7-degree. They got a Super 8 lock. They got there's all kinds of different keepers that if you don't have the right one with the right retainer, then your contact area inside the retainer is not going to be right. So you got to check that too. And the other thing is, what will happen is we'll get brand new keepers for 11/32 stem, and we'll put them together, start putting things together, and the manufacturer screwed up and they put 2 3/8 locks in there. And so whenever we get our locks, we take and put them on the valve stem and make sure they fit the valve stem before we start assembling the cylinder heads. Because the 3/8 one obviously is going to have too much clearance and is not going to be able to grasp the top of this valve, and it's going to create a problem. And we've seen that before. We've had guys bring their heads in here and from other places, and it sucked a valve, and it was because they had the wrong keepers in there. And so, or the other thing is too, you lay them down on the bench, and if you're assembling several different sets of heads, you might pick up the wrong keepers. So you got to check all that stuff when you're putting it together. But yeah, so I mean, it's a critical thing, and I don't think a lot of guys look at it. So I thought it would be important to talk about that tonight. If you guys have any questions, we can go over that, and if not, then you know what? We're just going to sit here and bullshit.
Well, so let's get some comments caught up here. And John Dornbush wanted to know if you're still working on the same set of heads, because I played the video of you porting the cast iron heads from summertime
Oh,
last year.
yeah, I still got to get those done. Those were my heads. That's the last one on my list.
Everyone's saying hi. So we got B&R Racing, we got Dwayne Myers, we got William Rossenberger, Old School Twist, Timothy Arnott, and Mark Marshall's with us. Philip III is with us. Brian Whitaker's with us. Chris Mansell is with us. And
Well, good. We got a good crowd tonight.
yeah, I think
Thank
that's
you guys
it
all
for
for
right
showing
now.
up.
That's commenting.
Who is?
That's it for right now. Who is commenting?
Oh, okay.
We got more than that watching, but they're being bashful.
Yep. That's okay as long as they're
Different from me.
there. Right?
Oh, Johnson CNC Design. Sorry, babe.
Thank you.
So Tim Arnott wants to know, what did you decide on that repop Rammer 4 intake?
I'm going to share a video, or actually pictures tomorrow on Facebook with that. I wanted to do a video, but we ran out of time today, and I got to get that engine together. So that intake's going on the engine tonight. But we ended up epoxying that. We got a killer epoxy, man. I stumbled onto this epoxy about 3 or 4, well, probably time flies for me. So maybe 7, 8 years ago. But anyhow, it's called Belzona 1111, and the stuff is incredible. It's the best epoxy I've ever used. It resists fuel. It's when it hardens, it machines like steel. You can drill it, tap it, grind it. I mean, it's an incredible epoxy. And so instead of trying to weld that thing up and distorting the heck out of it, and then we have to mill it and get it to line up the heads again, we use the epoxy on that. And you'll see in the pictures, I took some good pictures of it so you guys can see it, but that's how we fixed that. And it turned out really good. And then we have an aluminum paint that looks just like fresh aluminum. And that's what we use on just about all of our builds. If they got aluminum heads or aluminum intake manifolds or aluminum block, whatever they are, we paint it with that aluminum paint. And it's real durable. And it keeps it looking nicer. A lot of you guys, I don't know if you know it or not, but like a lot of aluminum parts, they get media blasted, and the media they use is little iron balls, and so you'll see aluminum rust. It gets orange looking, or you'll actually see rust specks on aluminum parts, and that's because of the blasting process it went through.
John Dornbush asked, lash caps, good or bad, and what point do you use them, if ever?
Well, you want to definitely use a lash cap for high spring pressures, for sure, and titanium valves. Titanium, you can get a hardened tip installed in a titanium valve, and that's a good idea. But if you don't want to run a hardened tip in them, then definitely you have to run a lash cap on it. And they make 2 different styles of lash caps too. They got a captured and they have a free floating. And that's something you got to pay attention to as well. This keeper, I don't know if you can turn this camera back on
Yep,
here.
it's on.
Okay. So
I
this
got it on side view.
So if you look at it, this keeper's recessed for a lash cap. Now, that's good, but you also have to make sure whatever lash cap you use with this recessed valve lock, that it doesn't come in contact with that edge right down here whenever you push it down on the valve. Because sometimes the skirt or sides of the lash cap will sit right on top of these keepers. Well, then it unload this keeper and the valve will come out, or it'll release a spring and the valve will fall in the engine. So you got to check that too. There's so many things you got to check. And it used to be that a lot of these parts, we just take them out of the package and clean them and put them in and run them. But that was when stuff was made in the United States. Now it's getting made from all over the world, not just China, everywhere. It's getting made in Spain, Italy, Pakistan. I mean, it's made all over, and everybody's got their own specs that they go by, and none of them are the same. So you have to check everything now.
Philip III wants to know, can you correct eccentric guides, and if so, how?
Non-concentric guide, you can fix that, but it's very painstaking. You're better off. The way we do it is if we get a guide that's totally out to lunch, we'll either machine it out in line, the proper the way it's supposed to be, and put a new guide in it, or if it's got a guide that's a removable guide, then we'll knock it out and buy a smaller guide inside diameter so we can machine it and get it lined back up with the valve seat. And but that's about the only way you can really fix it. I mean, you can machine the valve seat, which we do, and you can correct 90% of it that way. But if you get one that's really out to lunch, 15 thousandths is not a lot when you figure side to side. It's 7.5 a side, and so it's not all 15 thousandths on one side, and that it can usually be fixed by cutting the valve seat. And how we do that too is we can put a bigger valve in it. You can use a larger intake or exhaust valve. Say it's got like a Pontiac, a 211 intake valve. We can put a 215 intake valve in it and fix it that way, and it's real easy to fix that way. If the guide's still in good shape, that's sometimes what we'll do.
Chris Mansell wants to know, he got a quadra flush on a 66 Impala with a 396. They're rebuilding the motor. Can he send you the car?
Absolutely. What did he say he's got on? What was
Quadra
it?
flush.
Oh. Quadra flush. Hey, that's a damn good carburetor, buddy. I love them carburetors. I don't know if Dave Lalbert's with us tonight, but he's actually got one of my old Quadrajet carburetor shop manuals I wrote back in, I think it was back in the 80s I wrote that manual. I don't remember now. But it teaches you how to hop it up, and it gives you all the part numbers for metering rods and all that kind of stuff in there too. It needs updated. I mean, I wrote that back in the 80s, so a lot of the part numbers aren't the same anymore. But
Keith Lipford wants to know, how did the RA2s come out?
awesome. That the problem I have is because we're moving so fast here. We got so many projects. We are so far out on engine builds right now. It's just insane. Plus we got restoration projects going on, and transmissions to rebuild, and rear ends to rebuild, and carburetors to rebuild. We got a lot going on, and so I don't get to always capture everything that we do. So you guys only get bits and pieces of it here and there, and that was part of it. That's one of the things. I did get some pictures of that intake. I don't know that I got any finished pictures of the Ram Air 2 heads when we were all done with them. Just what we have in the video, but they turned out really nice. I don't know if Brandon even flowed them. We don't flow heads very much anymore. We used to, but we do so many heads now. We know exactly what to do, what throat sizes to have, what valve angles, and blah blah blah. So we pretty much know what they're going to flow. We don't need to flow every head we do.
And Dave is with us. He said, I'm here. Timothy Arnett is asking, he says, I still want to know about the Ram Air 4 intake. Oh, okay, you just said it. You haven't addressed it yet. It's not going to be fun. Yes, I would want you to weld it up, but what's the metallurgy?
Metallurgy.
Yeah, you're taking a chance.
Yeah, that's the thing. We don't know what the Chinese used in that. And sometimes you hit that thing with a welder and it'll just blow apart. And so I don't take the chance with that anymore. We used to, a factory intake, sure, I'd weld that thing in a second because I know it's going to weld well. But this Chinese crap we get, you don't know what kind of scrap they poured in there. And, Hopsing over there making these intake manifolds and selling them for 50 cents. So these guys in America can sell them for $500, and you just don't know what you're going to get.
Old School Twist says, I used one of those cheap Amazon sand attachments on some crusty aluminum intakes, and the water kept the magnum slag from creating the dark spots. Worked pretty good. A little marine clean, I'm sure, would take them like new after that.
Yep.
Assembled in the U.S. with parts from elsewhere. And Mark Marshall said even Boeing is getting their butts kicked with faulty parts due to outsourcing.
Oh, it's terrible. And you know what? I got another customer that he works, I don't remember what, he works on jet engines though, and it's closely with Timken. And the bearings that they're using in these jet engines are failing. They can't even get the thing out of the hangar. And it's bad. It's really bad, guys. I complain about it all the time, and I show everybody on YouTube, but this is no lie. Every part that we get now, there's something wrong with. Every part. And everybody says, well, just send it back. You're going to get the exact same thing. So you have to you got to be smart, and you got to figure out how to make it work. And you need to know how to fix it. And that's what we do. We make it work, and it ends up being okay. But man, it just adds a lot of extra labor and stress and headache and you know, or head scratching you got to do. It's bad. It's bad.
Philip III says, can you recut the valve seat to correct eccentric? Okay, he was writing that. You answered that.
Yep.
But I wanted to read is his second one was, I have seen other guys install new seats and cut them using the guide as a dead center.
Yeah, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, whenever you're putting new heads together, they're going to be off just a little bit, and that's normal. You know, you get everything done on a CNC machine, but like our Ram Air 5 stuff, when you drive the guide in, even all it takes is a little bit of a lead where it leads off, and you know what, a thousandths up here by the guide, down here by the valve can be as much as 3, 4, 5 thousandths. So yeah, it's gonna happen, and so that's just typical production procedure.
Timothy Arnett says, thanks for answering, guys. I was whining while you were grinding on the head. Glad you found a solution. I wrote the epoxy down you like. I enjoy this form. It's pretty damn cool. And he said, wouldn't it be nice if they made it properly? Yeah. And then Philip III says, new question. At the beginning of the show, you were port grinding. Where do you get the grinding burrs? Harbor Freights are crap. And when I need good tooling, I use MSC.
MSC is good, but we're lucky. It actually they make the carbide burrs right here in Monroe Falls, Ohio, and it used to be SPS, but I don't know what it's called now. Somebody bought them out. It's a Japanese company now, but they're still high quality.
Yeah, you go to Chrome Heart too, don't you? For sometimes.
They're just a distributor, but they don't actually make them there.
No, but I mean.
And is it SPS or SGS? I don't remember now.
SPS,
Anyhow, you can buy them at Summit Racing too, and McMaster Car.
Summit Racings are not good. They use the same thing Harbor Freight uses now.
Oh, do they? Mm-hmm. Oh, I haven't bought one there in a while. I get them at McMaster Cars where I get them at.
Old School Twist said, and just think that they are using diversity, equality, and inclusion, hiring pilots instead of qualifications too. Glad I like to drive everywhere.
Yeah, you know what? Mark Marshall's on here tonight. I bet he'd pipe in on that. I'm sure
he just said something. He said GE CFM engines have been failing globally due to outsourced internal fan parts, failing because of faulty metals used in the mix, don't hold up high temp and fails.
Yeah. And we're talking about aircraft.
Yeah.
And there's thousands of planes up there. I mean, look at the radar sometime. It's just crazy how many planes are in the air. And them things start falling out of the sky. It ain't going to be pretty.
No. Well, what I'm worried about is the newer planes, because some of those planes they've been flying for years, so they
Well,
might
that's
have,
why actually, when that guy tells me they got a 50-year-old plane, good, put me on that one. I know that one's good.
yeah, it's got good solid parts on it.
Right. It's like an old car.
Now I'm gonna just scan through these, make sure we didn't miss anyone. DJ's with us.
So next week, hopefully my son can make it. He might not be here. I don't know. And it's a little bit tougher for me to do by myself. He kind of does the tech thing. You know, I talk to you guys, but I had a suggestion for super stock, or no, stock eliminator combinations. And so we might be able to go over something like that next week if you guys want to do that. That's a pretty complex thing to talk about. So if we do that, what'd you do, girl?
She's starting to laser with the lid open.
It doesn't matter, it doesn't work anyway. That's safety feature, my dumbass.
My daughter-in-law. But anyways, if my son's with us, then we can maybe go over some of that stuff. Otherwise, I'm going to try to keep it simple until he's around, because the complex conversations I need to have help with.
We need to develop a matter transporter. I will work closely with you on that. Don. Philip III said that.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, you know what? They did it in Star Trek. Why can't we do it in real life? Actually, I think they do have a transporter now, and it's not working real well. I think they've had several failures, but they are transporting. So, but yeah, it'd be my luck. I'd come back and my butthole would be on my forehead. That wouldn't be a good look. I got a hairy butthole.
Oh, God. Take it on.
Yeah. What's your opinion on stainless headers products? Oh, stainless steel headers products for their kits and turbo headers.
Stainless headers have got some nice stuff. So,
Yeah, they're in Streets Pro too.
there's Stainless Works.
Oh, that might be stainless works.
Yeah, and I don't know if I haven't talked to them guys in a while, so I don't know what they have anymore. But stainless headers, there's another header company over in Berea, Ohio, and he actually patented a header flange idea, which is actually pretty cool. They're like cast stainless steel flanges that capture the tube, and it's kind of like that ball and socket kind of a thing on the collector that you see a lot of headers have now. So it can swivel a little bit, and it seals up pretty good. I can't remember the name of that guy though. I was going to work with him to get Ram Air 5 headers built, but he ended up landing a contract with Summit Racing, and he got overwhelmed with that, so my project got put on the back burner.
I can't remember. Mark Marshall says he's 36 years in seat, can't comment on social media about the new generation. However, they still have to pass check rides to work for us.
Yeah.
And then Philip III says, so you just have long eyelashes.
Yeah, something like that.
And then Steve Crumley says, cheers from Tennessee again.
Hey, Steve. Yeah, so what do you guys want to talk about tonight? Somebody bring up a conversation topic, and let's go over it. The valve stem thing, I mean, it's not a long conversation, but it's something that's important, and I wanted you guys to see that so you know how to look for it and what to do about it. But yeah, you got to make sure you have the right clearance on your valve stems. You got to make sure that another thing too is your pattern on top of your valve with the rocker arm, the way it travels across that. It's important to keep it tight, but if you get it too tight, then it's only got a real small area it rides on, and that's going to overheat the stem of the valve, and that'll cause problems too. So yeah, you want a tight pattern, but you don't want it too tight.
Timothy Arnett says, "Got split, fellow stupid domestic garbage. We'll watch all your vids and look for next Wednesday. Poncho Power." Mark Marshall wants to know how his 522 is coming along.
It sounds awesome. I was going to try to video that today and get that on, but I didn't get an opportunity. We were just way too busy today, and I didn't get to do it. So I had I've been slammed with work. I've been coming in. I get up every morning at 4:30 and I go to the gym from 5 to 6. And then once I get done to the gym, I come home, get something to eat real quick, and then I come into the shop usually about, I don't know, 7:30 to 8 o'clock, somewhere around there. And so I put in a long day.
Philip III says, "Will you work on the L67 3800 and do high performance?"
Yeah, you know what? I've actually done some 3800 stuff because the Buick Grand Nationals, and I ported cylinder heads for those guys and intake manifolds, and those heads actually respond really, really well to porting and bigger valves.
Is that the same motor though?
It's got pretty much the same cylinder head on it, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
It's just sideways instead of forward and rear.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the Grand Prix are transverse, yep.
Yeah. Huh. I thought they changed when because they came out with those type of cars later on, and I thought they made a whole new motor for it.
Yeah, no, that 3800 that was in the Grand Nationals, I think it's got the same cylinder head as the later ones. I did a set of heads for a guy with a Grand Prix, a GTP or whatever that supercharged one is, and yep, and I'm pretty sure those heads are like the Grand National head.
Old School Twist said, "My heads for my turbo motor have Ferreira 5,000 valves."
Ferreira.
What are they?
Ferreira.
Ferreira?
Yep.
I always call them Ferreira. 5,000 valves. Would you use severe duty for the exhaust? At most, we'll see maybe, and that's a strong maybe, 12 to 15 pounds of boost.
Yeah, I still would. We use severe duty valves in everything we build. It doesn't matter if it's a 300 horsepower engine or if it's a 1200 horsepower engine.
Now, when you say severe duty, is it a thicker valve, like a valve stem's thicker?
Well, actually,
Or
severe
different
duty
metal?
valve is a different stainless makeup, yeah. So the ones that we use are 24N. I don't remember the whole formula on it, but it's a way tougher stainless steel. And the other thing you want to do too is you want to make sure that you get a one-piece valve. You don't want where they make the head and the valve stem separate and they actually spin weld those things together. That's a two-piece valve, and you do not want to run those. And I'm not going to say what companies make them like that because I'm just not going to do that, but you want to check to make sure they don't do that.
DJ said, "Oh, baby." Talking about you working long days. And Mark Marshall wants to know if I'm engraving the valve covers. I think you got those ready for me to take home. Right?
Actually, I got them out to get ready for you, but I have not gotten them ready for you yet.
Okay.
I still got to get those done.
BNR Racing says, "Do you use ultra narrow valve seats on high performance street and racing like 035, 040 for maximum airflow numbers? How long do they hold up? Leaded race fuel, methanol E86, etc."
You know, a lot of guys are worried about valve stem wear or valve seat wear with the narrow seats. And if you use a good severe duty valve that has got a good chemical makeup, and your valve seats are concentric, and your valve stem clearance is where it's supposed to be, and you run the proper engine oils and all that stuff, Honestly, I am not, and we run narrow valve seats on our most of our street strip, or even what we call our performance street builds, which they're only 9.5 to 1 compression engines that make around 400 to 500 horsepower, but we run a narrow seat on them. And we just had an engine back here that had about probably 7, 8 years. No, it was more than that. It was probably 12 years of use on it, and the valve seats still look brand new in that engine. And now we're not running a lot of spring pressure on those engines. They only have typically around 120 pounds on the seat and maybe 360 or 70 open. So it's not a high spring deal. But even our race stuff, we get them back, every couple years and check them, and the seats look good, So I'm not afraid to run a narrow seat. I'm not afraid to run 55-degree seats either, and we run them on the street. A lot of guys say you can't run a 55-degree seat. Old school, everybody says, oh, the valves will stick. Well, I think what was causing that is they didn't have the valve seat and the valve concentricity correct, and then you were getting, you would have a valve that would stick or even pop the valve seat or pop the valve head off of it. And I think that was what was causing it. It wasn't the valve seat angle.
Philip the Third says, I remember you talking about leg day. The closest I get to leg day is fried chicken legs or barbecue legs.
You know what? Today was leg day. Every Wednesday.
BNR Racing says, I watched on the drive home, set my cell phone on the instrument cluster to listen to most.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
He says he's leery on ultra narrow valve seats cut ground. He wants maximum durability.
Well, you got to remember too, if you make the valve seat too wide, you're going to get carbon buildup, and when that happens, then you're going to have the opposite problem. Instead of the seat, actually think about it. What's going to happen with a narrow valve seat? Is it going to hurt anything? Not going to hurt a thing. But a wide valve seat can hurt something. It can get carbon buildup on there and make the valve stick open a little bit, and then it's going to burn, and then you're going to burn a valve. So I'd rather have a narrow seat than a wide seat any day. And we've never had any problem with it. I've never seen any erosion or wear or anything.
And so would this be a narrow
Well,
seat?
it's different.
Or-
This is different. On this, you're going to have a wide seat, but on the seat in the head, it's going to be narrower.
So you got more angles.
Well, no, it's just the area where the valve seat rides on.
Oh, okay. I see
Yeah,
what you're saying.
this on the valve here, it might be, say, 60 thousandths, but in the head it might only be 40
Right.
on the seat in the head. But we do run a little bit wider seat on the valve than we do on the seat in the head. So if we have a 40,000 seat in the head, then we'll run 60 or 70 on the valve. Now, one thing that you do not want to do is you don't want to run the exhaust seats too narrow, because then what will happen is you're not going to get enough heat transfer from the valve to the cylinder head to cool the valve off, and then you'll get an exhaust valve that runs too hot, and then you're going to have guide problems. And that's part of the reason why you got to look at your valve stem wear, and that'll tell you if you're running too narrow of a seat on the exhaust side. And that's not good either, because there's a couple things that'll wear the valve stem and it'll cause detonation.
So if you had a motor, like a street motor though, like what sounds like what he's going to be building to run on the street and whatever, he's not going to tear his head off to just look at the valve wear. Is there another way to tell?
No, that's why you go to somebody that's experienced that done it, and then that way you follow their lead, and whatever they tell you to do, make sure you follow it. But building engines like opinions. Everybody's got one, and so you have to be careful and not listen to too many different people, because what might work for me, you can't mix what I do with, like, say, another engine builder, because they may have a different formula. They may find that they run a real narrow seat on the valve and they run a wide seat in the head, and it works for them. I'm not saying they do, but I'm just saying they could. And if you try to say, well, Don says I'd run a narrow seat on the valve and or on the head and then run a wide seat on the valve, maybe if I combine the two, I can get the best of both worlds. It doesn't work that way. You got, whoever tells you to do it their way only. And make sure they know what they're doing. So, yeah, no, that's another thing too, you know. I feel bad. I don't know if the guy that we're doing that Ram Air 2 for right now is watching tonight, but don't go to an engine builder with all your parts that you bought from all the different companies. Every time that somebody does that to me, a lot of times I won't even take the job. But if I do take the job, it never fails. Just about everything that they bought, we cannot use. And I feel bad saying, well, I can't use that. Nope, can't use that. Nope, we can't use that. Because I know what fails. I know what works well together. And I know what's durable. And I am not gonna compromise my build. This Ram Air 2 engine, like that intake manifold. I've seen that intake manifold a zillion times before. I know what they look like when they come in. They're all like that. They come out of China. They don't seal up against the head. The ports don't line up. It looks like a kindergartner ground them out, gasket matched them. So I don't buy those intake manifolds. If we can't find a factory one, then I try to talk them into a Performer RPM or factory cast iron intake. What else did we deal with on that? He had somebody else machine the heads, and I'm a stickler on valve stem height. They all got to be the same. Otherwise, it affects your geometry on your valve train. So, and on those Ram Air 2 heads, the intake valves were 40 thousandths shorter than the exhaust. And then, you know, a lot of builders say, well, it's got adjustable rocker arms, ain't no big deal. No, it is, to me, a big deal. I want my valve stem wear to be the same on every valve. So we had to redo the valve job on the heads, and he brought them already done. I felt bad because he paid good money to have that done. And I mean, and the work looked good. I mean, it wasn't that. It's just that they didn't make all the valve stem heights the same. And what else did I find on that engine? He had the wrong piston, and then they had the wrong. We had to regrind the crankshaft, and I mean, it was just one thing after another on this build. And so you're better off, and it's going to be cheaper. I know you think you're going to save money buying parts from everybody, but just go to somebody and let them buy all the parts and do all the machine work. It's going to be cheaper for you.
B&R Racing says, do you like loose fitting valve stem to guide clearance such as 0.0025 to...
Well, that's 2.5.
Yeah.
2.5 thou.
Okay, well, or 3 thou, or
Mhm.
tight as 15 to 20.
And 1.5 to 2. Well, some of the stuff we do run 1.5 on the intakes. We very, very seldom. A lot of times our intake valves, I set them up with 2 thousandths clearance on the intake, and the exhaust 2.5. And if it's a turbo or a blower engine, we'll run as much as 4 thousandths on the exhaust side. And it isn't going to hurt a thing. Yeah, it might smoke a little bit when you hit the key and fire it up for the first couple seconds. Deal with it.
That's cool.
Deal with it. It's better than losing a valve.
William Rossberger says, I just let Don do my valve jobs. And B&R Racing says, when the power is on heavy loads, Pontiac V8, Don, does Pontiac V8 need extra exhaust clearance, like certain horsepower levels?
Anything blown or turbocharged or nitrous oxide, anything that adds exhaust heat, yes, you got to run more clearance on the exhaust. And a lot of guys freak out. Well, if you got 4 thousandths valve stem clearance, you're gonna the valve's not gonna seat right. That bullshit. If you got the valve job done right and everything's concentric, it's gonna seal up just fine. And now the intake, I don't like running a lot of clearance on the intake only because of I don't want a lot of oil in the combustion chamber running down from the valve stem. because oil in the combustion chamber can cause detonation. So I try to keep the chamber as clean as possible whenever it's on the suction side.
Well, then it just makes the chamber dirty too.
Oh yeah, yeah. You'll see it. It gets carbon buildup inside and on the back of the valve, and it makes a mess.
Old School Twist said universal fit fits absolutely nothing in the universe.
Amen.
Good one.
And BNR Racing says, I hate China parts, Brandon and Don. And thank you for your insight and expertise, Don. And thanks, Brandon, for your tech savvy in the live.
Yep. Well, hey, thanks for coming, guys. We really appreciate you being here. There's so much that we can talk about, and what I try to do is I try to keep it short. I don't want to be talking the whole time you're on the podcast. I want to have conversation with you guys like we do right now. I want to take questions and hear your side too. So and answer your questions if you guys are putting an engine together or whatever, or if what it is, just curiosity. I don't care.
Yep.
That's what this is all about.
Yep.
This kind of like a bullshit session, like if you're sitting with your buddies on a Friday night and drinking a couple of beers and and telling stories and making up lies.
Yep. Well, and we got a side conversation going on too, which is what we want. DJ and Philip III are talking about the Philip III has a 3800 supercharged from the factory and it runs well, but he wants to see how far he can push it. And DJ, he was saying something about running a supercharger on 3800. So.
Well, yeah, DJ's got a 2-liter in his Cobalt that he's built a supercharged engine for, and he's getting close to getting that thing running. So, yeah, they got something in common. Philip's got a supercharged Grand Prix, and DJ's got a Cobalt.
Yep. BNR Racing says, I have heard of guys running 8 thou exhaust valve stems to guide clearance, ultra high horsepower, 2000 plus.
I believe that. I can see like a Top Fuel deal, or these guys are putting down 3,000 horsepower to the tire with turbos. The exhaust heat that's going to generate, because the more horsepower you make, the more exhaust heat you're going to make. And you have to take precaution to protect all the parts on the hot side. And one of them is making sure you got enough valve stem clearance to keep that oil circulating around that valve. Otherwise, you'll stick a valve, and nothing worse than sticking a valve on a blown or a nitrous deal. That's whenever you see shit happen. It makes real pretty pictures, though.
Yeah. Good video, too.
Yeah.
Steve said, universal fit, small print, finished machining may be required.
All right.
Phil the third said he's on beer number 2.
Yep, me too.
And Old School Twist said, what brand paint are you using on the Mopar?
What brand? You know what? You're talking about when we paint the car. We just bought the top of the line stuff.
House of Color?
Glazeret.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Glazeret, and that stuff is big dollar. But you know what? You get what you pay for.
And is that clear base coat?
Yeah, it's a base coat clear, and it's 2 factory colors that we just mixed together to get the color we wanted on that. I don't know if I shared any pictures of that panel that we have or not.
I don't even know where that panel went.
It's probably outside now. But
It's getting weather tested.
yeah, exactly.
William said, might be doing a 390 to a 445. We'll know in a couple weeks. And Philip III says, I am also good with PT Cruiser engines. I can see how that they will take big boost with big turbos.
I got another friend of mine, his name's Chuck Green, and he's got minivans, and he runs them turbocharged 4-cylinders in that thing. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, I just know the vans you're talking about. I've seen some of those guys do it.
Well, he lives right over here in Stowe.
Oh, I probably do know him then.
And he's one of the ones that does a lot of those coffee and
Cars
cars,
and coffee.
yeah, cars and coffees or whatever. And he's actually the one that did the Supercar Showdown way back in like the '80s. And he worked with the NMCA and got that going, and so he's pretty well involved. But now he's into minivans with turbocharged 4-cylinders, and he's got one I think that runs like, I don't know, if it ain't in the tens, it's real close.
Well,
And it's front wheel drive.
I do believe that's the same block as the SRTs as the Neons had.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it is. I
And
don't
if
know
it is,
anything about
then
Mitsubishi
they can take
engines.
huge turbos.
Well, you know what? Ben from the car farm, them guys were working with Richard Holdner, and they built him a 4-cylinder for his GLH, and they had it on our chassis dyno, and it made big power for what it is. I was shocked. I think it made over 300 horsepower, didn't it?
I forget what it made.
At the
but
tire?
Yeah.
I mean, out of a little 4-cylinder, I know it's turbocharged, but still, that's a lot of power.
Yeah. And the turbo they put on it, in my opinion, I don't think it was as big as they can go with it. That motor.
Yeah, I don't know. Ben was telling me a little bit about it, but I don't remember the specifics on it. But yeah, so they were. I think they're still working with that deal.
Yeah, I think they're tuning it.
Yep. But yeah, he's got a YouTube channel, so you might want to check him out. It's called The Car Farm.
And BNR Racing said intake side was 2 to 2.5 thou. Yeah, intake side.
Yeah, that's good. That's fine. Yeah, but 8,000s on the exhaust, that doesn't surprise me if it's got a lot of exhaust heat. And you got to think about something else too. The exhaust valve is going to expand a little bit. So there's different materials for exhaust valves. You can use stainless. There's different grades of stainless. You can use Inconel. Inconel is actually a trade name. There's a molecular structure of that trade name, but I don't remember the name of it. But anyway, or you can use titanium, and every one of them interact with heat differently. So you really need to know your stuff whenever you're running different exhaust valves, different materials for exhaust valves. And some of that stuff, if it's an Inconel valve, those things are actually designed to expand with heat. And it might start out with 8,000s cold, but whenever it's running, it might only be 4,000s clearance.
Old School Twist says Glasser Root.
Glazerite.
Oh. Glazerite, your pockets go to your ankles, but that's good stuff.
Yeah. It's not my pockets, it's customers.
And then Rich McKenna said, who's laying the paint down, Brandon or Don?
Brandon's going to do it. I'm too old.
And Keith Lipford, what did the Pontiac engineers do to make the Tri-Power get banned in '66?
I don't know if they did get it banned. I don't know why they quit using it. I'm not sure what happened there. You know what? Maybe John Dornbush knows, because he's up on all that stuff. And maybe Philip III too. He might know. I don't know. I didn't know it got banned. I just thought they dropped it. I know everybody complains about those tri-power carburetors, but there ain't nothing to them, guys. On the end carburetors, all they are is dumps. They don't have any idle circuits in them. They don't have any power valves. They don't have nothing in them. They're just like a secondary on a quadrajet carburetor. And everybody says, oh, they're so hard to tune. They're not hard to tune. All you got to do is make sure the end carburetors are sealed up at idle, and you got the right jetting in them. That's all you got to do. They work.
DJ said Brandon should be laying down the paint. I seen the way Don paints today, and well, it's not the outcome we want.
Whatever.
And,
Love you, brother.
Philip III says PTs have 2 cams and 2.4 with big chambers that lend themselves to boost. I believe I could get 400 horse out of one. That is why I mentioned about a dual overhead cam Rammer 5.
I would love to do at least a single overhead cam Ram Air 5. That way we can get the push right out of the port altogether. Although it doesn't seem to hurt anything, but we could get it out of there altogether. And man, I don't know. That would be a high RPM deal. I'd love to see that. And then you can reduce the valve spring pressures because you don't have all the push rod and the lifter and everything. So yeah, that would be cool. So get on that. Somebody design that for me.
And then B&R Racing's asked, do titanium valves, the stems expand a lot? I heard it doesn't much. Give it oil it needs. I think it is wise.
Yeah, well, the big thing with titanium is if you're going to run a titanium valve, you want to make sure and get them coated. Titanium is actually very abrasive, and it'll eat up a guide. So you have to make sure we get them coated so that they don't do that. And you have to change them. Titanium's a wear part. It's not like a stainless steel valve. Stainless steel valves will go 100,000 miles no problem. And I know that the new Corvettes and stuff have titanium valves in them, and they warranty those things for I don't know how long, 40, 50,000, I don't know what they do. But anyway, I know the factory does have the titanium valve, but they are not it's a fatigue type material. It wears and it will fail. So, but it's very abrasive on the valve guide, and if you don't have the stems coated or chrome plated, it'll eat up your guides in a short period of time. And actually, I think that's what was going on with the Z06 Corvettes, and why they were dropping valves, because they weren't coating the valves on those titanium valves in them. And they had Del West valves in those engines, which is a top of the line valve.
B&R Racing said GM came down on Pontiac and Oldsmobile because only the Corvette was allowed to have a tri-power after 66.
Oh, is that what it was?
And Philip III said they dropped it because the 400 was coming out in 67 and they just wanted to simplify it.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then to go back to the dual overhead cams, Philip III said not to mention the overlap adjustability of two cams.
Yeah, that would be tough. Single cam would be okay. Single on each head, I'd like to see that. Kind of like that 421 that McKellar had. That would be cool. And that's complicated enough. But yeah, that would be awesome. I'd like to do that, or you know what? John Dornbush might have seen this before. Maybe even Philip III. There was a guy. Man, there's a name for it. But anyhow, instead of having valves in the cylinder head, it's a big tube, and it had windows, and whenever it rotated, it would line up with the port, and it would suck in the air or blow out the exhaust. And they tried to make that work in Top Fuel, but I think because of the cylinder pressure from Top Fuel, they couldn't get it to work. They kept breaking them, we'll call them a shaft that was running through the cylinder head. But on an NA deal, that would be awesome to get the valve out of there altogether. That would be pretty cool. It's almost like a slider carburetor, you know, where the carburetor actually doesn't have a throttle plate in it. It's got a piston that slides out of the way and then comes back again whenever you let off the throttle.
B&R Racing said Pontiac was just too fast on the street. Corvette got scared.
Yeah, well, there ain't no doubt. Look what happened whenever that 1963 Le Mans lapped the field like 3 or 4 times. And that was all their premier Corvettes out there they were whooping on.
Philip III said, yep, it was called the rotary valve.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the guy who invented that, but that's a pretty cool concept. I don't know if some of you guys had maybe even never heard of that before, but I remember reading about that in Hot Rod Magazine in like 1971 or something. I don't know, it was a long time ago. You trying to find it?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool deal. That's why I like.
Looks like someone's trying to come out with a dual setup.
That's what it is right there. I mean, that's exactly.
Oh, that's what it is?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they had duals in it. I think they did. I think they had twin.
This looks like it might be the exhaust side and the intake side.
Right. Yeah. So, yep. That was pretty cool.
Huh.
But somebody tried to do that in Top Fuel. You know, Buddy Ingersoll also ran a turbocharged V6 in Top Fuel too, or no, Pro Stock. That's where he was at in Pro Stock. They let him run the only reason they let him run turbos is because he had a V6 and he was handicapped against the V8 cars. And man, he kicked everybody's ass. And whenever they did, that was the end of that. I think he was like a one-hit wonder.
Looks like motorcycles use this technology a lot.
Yeah, maybe they do. If I had to guess, it's some German guy, because I tell you what, those Germans, they over-engineer everything.
Yeah, rotary valve engine gets a second chance, smokes the competition.
Huh.
And that almost looks like a go-kart motor to me, but
The lawnmower engine.
they show right here, right there it is with the spherical valve and then the standard
Yep.
valve.
Well, you eliminate all your valve train pieces, you know, and you're getting the valve totally out of the picture, which is pretty cool.
Kind of looks like too, like maybe, I don't know why this green car conquest is coming up, but looks like you can play around with the size of the cam, I guess you can call it, and portable.
Well, I don't know about that. I think you can time it, but it's pretty much just wide open. And then you can advance or retard the you know, that window.
Pretty cool.
Yep, that was a pretty cool
All right, here's
concept.
a 700 3-cylinder triple rotary valve motor. That's what it looked like.
Man, I wonder if that was used in aircraft or something. Mark Marshall shared with me I think it was a Honda motorcycle head, uses three intake and 2 exhaust.
Oh yeah, right here's a motorcycle motor right here.
Yep. You know what? Everybody thinks that whenever you see some kind of a new concept come out now that, you know, oh, this guy's smart and he figured out something. No. They had gapless rings back in the 1800s. They had roller cams in the 1700s, I think. I mean, all this stuff that we run today, all they did was they took the mousetrap and made it better. That's all they did. They went back in history, seen what was used, and they improved on it. Is all they did.
John Dornbush said, with the exception of the Corvette, the tri-power setup was discontinued completely because of a 66 GM policy to limit horsepower. And B&R Racing said, my Victory 1 titanium valve I have made DLC coated Don, made for me, made to
Good.
1-3.
Yep, perfect. Yep.
And then Philip III says, Koensegi, some kind of German
Oh
name.
yeah, they got a really cool rocker system that gets rid of valve springs.
Yeah, it says it has a valveless engine.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they have a valveless engine or not, but they don't have valve springs. It actually uses cylinder pressure in the rocker to pull the valve shut.
John Dornbush said, my neighbor had a small Italian-made motorcycle in the 60s that used rotary valves. Philip III said, I think Mickey Thompson made a over 2 cam head for a Chevy small block. He made 2 sets, and after his death, they disappeared.
I don't know about Mickey Thompson. I know Duntov did a set, and Aries they dabbled with overhead cam stuff, and Batten did too. I think for the Oldsmobiles. So there's a lot of companies out there that dabbled with overhead cams.
And then B&R Racing said, I have heard pushrod engines have superior overlap breathing characteristics. Darren Morgan stated in the past live on YouTube, a single overhead cam and a dual overhead cam is totally different airflow dynamics.
It is. It's totally different, and it would take a learning curve. So, and I've worked with quite a few of those Ford 4-cylinders that have the overhead cam on them. 2.3 liter engines, I think they were. And we ported a lot of those heads for the turbocharged, what was that Thunderbird? I forget what they called it, something Turbo Coupe or something like that. But there was a lot of those running around here in Akron for a while, and I ported a guy's head, and he kicked everybody's ass. So then I started getting a lot of heads, but um, that was a pretty cool little engine too.
Philip Thurst says you need to come to Pensacola, Florida, to the NAS Museum. Maybe it could stand for Navy, Army, something museum, and see the engines they were built for the Navy aircraft.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? My cousin was in the Coast Guard, and he was stationed in South Carolina. I think it, I think it was South Carolina. Anyway, we went to a couple of naval bases down there, and they had some of that stuff, and it is cool to look at.
I thought it was,
Wasn't he in Charleston?
yeah, it was Charleston.
Yeah,
I was
Charleston.
going to say Savannah, Georgia, but
Yeah, he was in Charleston, South Carolina, I think.
Mark Marshall said Ducati has had springless valves. It's called Desmodromic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Oh,
what
you
it
know
was.
what I think that John Dornbush is talking about? He's talking about that real expensive sports car that has the, I think it's electric and turbocharged, and it makes some stupid amount of horsepower. It's like 1,200 horsepower from the factory. Cohen-Sieg or
Koenig or something. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah, I forget what that's called, but that is pretty badass, and it's got electric motors, I think, on all four wheels, and it's got a turbocharged 3-cylinder or something in it, and on motor it still makes like 600 horsepower, and then the rest of it comes from the electric drive.
Philip the Third says Naval Air Station. Okay, I thought it was something like that. It's better than the Smithsonian in DC.
Yeah, that's pretty good there too. I've been to that.
Every time I want to go there, it's always closed.
Well, that's because of COVID.
But yeah, it's 8:13, so if you want to wrap it up, we can.
All right, guys. Well, you know what? Next week, I don't know for sure what the topic will be. It'll all depend on whether my son's with me or not. So we'll see how it goes. And but what I'll do is I'm gonna, like I did tonight, I'll post on Facebook what we're gonna go over, and I'll try to get it on there sooner than I did tonight. Tonight I was just overwhelmed with work, so I didn't get a chance to get it on there till late. But maybe next week I can get it on there a little earlier, and hopefully we get everybody to come back and we can have another BS session.
Yep. All right, everyone. Have a good night.